tonight to 12 battleground states. Those are the states that the candidates spent the most time in, spent the most money in. Those are the states that are going to determine this election. We have some votes in, 3 states called so far. As I said, our entire team is here. World News anchor David Muir. We don't have a lot of results. We do have exit polls.
Exit polls, and these are preliminary, as you know, George, but we're already seeing some incredibly fascinating signs about the makeup of this country and some of the key issues as they headed to the polls today. First, take a look at the issue of race in this country, and in particular the racial makeup of the voters. 70% of the voters who turned out today white, 30% non-white. That number is up from 28% 4 years ago, and that number has tripled since 1976. It's going to be interesting to see the racial makeup in these key battlegrounds. On the question of honesty, so much attention paid to Hillary Clinton, the emails, that private server. When they were asked which candidate is most honest and trustworthy, 37% of voters saying Hillary Clinton, 32% saying Donald Trump is the most honest and trustworthy. This is a key question, as we know. Which is most qualified to be president? Which candidate? Hillary Clinton, 53% at this point. Donald Trump, 37%. This is preliminary data. And on the final question, and George, you remember we asked Donald Trump about temperament. He said, I have the best temperament to be commander-in-chief, to be president. Voters were asked this question. Who has the best temperament? 56% saying Hillary Clinton. At this point, 34% saying Donald Trump.
Temperament and qualifications, 2 issues Hillary Clinton went right at. I'm also joined by my This Week colleague, Martha Raddatz is here as well. You spent a lot of time during this election on the road, and you really did hear this distaste for both candidates.
Absolutely. I'm not really voting for that person. I'm voting against the other.
A ton of enthusiasm. We'll see if that changes tonight. Our chief political analyst, Matthew Dowd, also here. What's the one thing you're watching for?
I'm watching, as David said, I'm watching the demographics. To me, that's the history getting made tonight. Who's declared president? The history is this country has fundamentally changed over the last 20 years.
And John Carl, you've been doing a deep dive in all the states. I want to put up again these 12 states we are watching most closely, these battleground states.
North Carolina, one of the big battleground states that was visited in the state of Florida. And here's the thing, George, with both of those states, Donald Trump simply has to win. With North Carolina, it is very difficult to see how he gets elected president if he loses. With Florida, it is virtually impossible to see how he's elected. And if I can tell you one more item here, if you're looking at Florida, if you want to look at one place on this entire map, look at Hillsborough County.
That is the bellwether county right there. Okay, you know, we're in kind of an odd place tonight, right here in Times Square. David Muir, you know, she had such a hard time figuring out how to talk about the emails. The first time she apologized was in an interview with you.
Yeah, and it was really interesting. And you had a sense going in that she knew she had to address the email question, George. We asked her that September day. She said, I'm sorry. And we talked about the book that she wrote right before the campaign. And in that book, she talks about how important it is that a candidate acknowledges that they make mistakes, that a politician's able to call it a mistake. And I said, would you call it a mistake? And she said, I absolutely would. It's very interesting, though. Fast forward a year later, we sat down with her in the middle of this investigation, this question mark, and I said, can you believe we're still talking about your emails? You could tell she knew it really dogged her. Tim Kaine came to her defense, and I think she welcomed him in that way, on particular that issue, because she was so exhausted of trying to defend herself.
She needed some bolstering on that, no question about it. Let me go to Amy Robach right now at the New York Hilton. You've been with the Trump campaign from the start. You and I were both there in Trump Tower, June 2015. I can tell you from my part, I'm not sure Donald Trump thought so either.
George never doubted. This was an incredible campaign account. And he
looked like one of his iconic sentences, I could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue and not lose a vote. For a long time, that held.
George, think about how much he bounced back from. In a sense, he disparaged Hispanics, African Americans, every single voting bloc. Truly is, in many ways, a comeback kid. And the reason why, he never stopped fighting. He kept in this race the entire time.
5 rallies right through midnight last night. Okay, Charlie, it's great to see you. And, you know, you started covering campaigns for ABC News, I think, back in 1976, the Ford. None of us has ever seen a campaign quite like this one.
David made mention of Hillary Clinton's book and a chapter about when you should apologize. Being retired, I look at it sort of from 10,000 feet.
You're bringing that question to Cokie Roberts, because Cokie, you grew up in politics years. They really thought Washington was broken. It's going to be a big challenge for whoever wins tonight to try to make something work there as well.
It's going to be very, very hard to pull this together, but there's some, and it's exciting, and let's do something.
And Terry Moran, you spend most of your time in London as our chief foreign correspondent. I think a lot of people all around the world look at this election with eyes wide open.
They were shocked, and there's no question that it's done damage to the United States image around the world. You don't have to look any farther than Iran. When the Ayatollahs wanted to find the best anti-American propaganda they could this year, They showed the presidential debates to the people of Iran. And then they just said, look at how degenerate and broken that system is. And for our allies around the world, friends and allies, this was a shocker. You know, they heard one of the major party candidates question the commitment of the United States to NATO. That's a bell that will be hard to unring for people around the world. And even beyond that, for people around the world, for all the problems that America has, the American democracy is still seen as kind of a beacon of stability, of decency, of order, and it's damaged that.
And people thought then maybe we're heading towards a post-racial America. Clearly not the case.
George, something happens when you raise your head. You got to look both ways.
Okay, we got to take a quick break. And we are back now with Election Night 2016. We just heard Cecilia Vega talking a few minutes ago about this email issue. James Comey. I want to talk to our senior justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, about that. Boy, Pierre, James Comey getting it from all sides for coming out in July and giving that commentary when he came out 10 days ago and said he was looking at it again. And then Sunday, the same thing. What kind of damage has this done to him? 7 years left. Pierre Thomas, thanks very much. Let me bring that to Nate as well, Republican and Democratic. Stephanie Cutter, let me begin with you. You, of course, worked on President Obama's campaigns.
I feel pretty good, especially in Florida, where the makeup of that electorate is becoming all that much more diverse.
Alex Castellanos, Republican strategist. I think you started out this campaign not a big fan of Donald Trump, came on board for Donald Trump as the months.
That has it's been difficult to bring the party together and all that. You know, we shouldn't forget that on occasion these elections are not just about the candidates.
A lot of Republicans never came on board for Donald Trump. One of them, Bill Kristol, former President George W. Bush and his wife Laura did not vote for Donald Trump, said the Republican Party simply cannot get on board.
And which I think confirms the point you made to Alex. And most Republicans came on board, but the implications of Trump will ripple through the Republican Party. And
you're right. I have a feeling tonight, as we're looking at the exit polls.
Live coverage of Election Night 2016. Here again, George Stephanopoulos.
And we are back now, 7:30 in the East, and polls have just closed in 3 more states. Polls have closed in 2 battleground states right now, including that state of North Carolina. Robbie Mook is even saying that he's the Clinton campaign manager. It's so close, they're not even sure it is going to be decided tonight. And Barack Obama went in there heavy in the last several days.
Went over there huge to try to boost the turnout among African-American voters. A lot of returns are coming in.
What do you got?
I'm tracking. So look at this. We have 40% of the vote already in, and Florida. Oh no, I mentioned Hillsborough County, the one that's been the bellwether forever in Florida. We don't have anything in from there yet, but looks exactly the same margin that Clinton is winning right now.
And that's really interesting because the Clinton campaign told us that was right on the bubble. I know you're going to keep an eye on that. The polls have also closed in the state of Ohio. And David Muir, I know you've been going through the exit polls. What are we learning from them about that state?
Part of his pitch is the working class blue-collar workers left behind in the Rust Belt and Ohio, as you mentioned, Republicans need. Take a look at these 2 questions. First, voters in Ohio were asked, and this is preliminary data, your job situation versus 4 years ago. 38% said the job situation's better today, 35% about the same. Only 27% said it's actually worse today. But then look at this issue that Donald Trump really doubled down on, trade. He really went after Hillary Clinton on this, and Bill Clinton, his time on this, and the trade deal struck by under the first Clinton administration. It takes away jobs. 47% concerned about trade deals. Only 32% in Ohio say it actually creates more jobs. So these are issues key to Trump's success in Ohio.
And Ron Claiborne in Ohio for us tonight or there this weekend.
Ohio, and what they hear from him, I can ask voters, say, do you believe that he'll make a change? Do you believe Hillary Clinton could make a change? They didn't believe he could really make change, but it gave them hope. He said what they wanted to hear.
And Matthew Dad, one of the signs of how much America's changing is right now Ohio is a state that Democrats can win the presidency without winning Ohio.
Well, and I think we're going to see over the campaign in the last look at his opinion is you look at his approval rating.
So close in the state of Virginia in the last half hour. And try to assess what it means.
Yeah, that would be pretty shocking. The Trump team actually pulled resources out of Virginia. But if you drill down, you see that Trump lead isn't all that it appears. And you see there's not much vote coming in. There's less than 1,000 votes in there. That's going to be overwhelmingly Clinton vote. And then Arlington County, it went for Obama by just 5 points last time, very close to what he actually won the state by.
And Matthew Dad, a real sign of a rapidly changing America right there. Virginia used to be part of the solid Republican South. It's been gone Barack Obama twice, as we said, as they get an influx of a lot of new populations.
Well, I think it's a reflection of this urban-rural split across the country. A lot of these states now are following the demographics.
Kristen Soltis Anderson, how does the Republicans get Virginian states like it back?
I think we've got to figure out how to win voters who live in denser areas.
And Mayor Stephanie Rawlings-Blake, Democratic mayor, a city heavy African-American population. But one of the concerns of Democrats, African-American voters were not coming out in the same kind of numbers they came out for Barack Obama. Time studying first ladies.
Absolutely. She was the prime surrogate to get voters out when Donald Trump just once went after her. The other thing Michelle Obama did that was so effective was...
Hillary Clinton said she wasn't running for Bill Clinton's third, especially in these final 2 weeks come out. And President Obama was very...
on that ever since that Vago trail.
Okay, got to take another quick break. Very much. Let's keep North Carolina.
Also big, it's populated. So I would expect, as we see more coming in from Raleigh-Durham and actual votes coming in, you're going to see Clinton pull ahead. You see one county here to keep an eye on that also has not come in 1996, but again, no vote coming in. So although you have about a quarter of the vote coming in, it's very even going back and forth. It seems to me there's a lot of Hillary Clinton vote that has not been counted.
And you got some exit polls there as well?
Yeah, some exit polls coming in, obviously preliminary from North Carolina. But when you ask when they made their decision, a lot of talk about Director Comey's announcement and then his announcement 9 days later that this was much ado about nothing, whether it would make a difference. Look at North Carolina. 59% said they made their decision much earlier in the election in the campaign season. 18% say in the month of October. Just 5% say in the last few days or the last week. And we've seen similar results from some of the other battlegrounds. And the qualities in North Carolina that matter most. 35% said can bring change. 22% good judgment. 21% right experience. But as you know, Donald Trump was campaigning on change in Washington.
And Martha Raddatz, North Carolina, another one of those states that is changing very rapidly.
Changing very rapidly. There's a fascinating figure here. 70% of the electorate has been white. It's down 2 points.
It is accelerating. Martha Raddatz, thanks very much. I have to take another quick break. And welcome back to Election Night 2016, 8 p.m. here in the East, and the polls have just closed in 16 states.
That's right. So the second congressional, and it's a part of the state that the Trump team has put a lot of effort in, because one of their paths to 270 electoral votes gets them to exactly 270 electoral votes, and they have to take that main
includes that one congressional district. Okay, state of the we're seeing in that vote right now.
Well, if you take a deep dive into Florida, first of all, as I'm saying, it's been going back and forth. Right now, Hispanic and overwhelmingly Democratic. And if we take a look at where Miami-Dade is going, bigger lead than Barack Obama had in 2012, and there still is a significant amount going to be overwhelmingly Hillary Clinton. But if you go up here, so there will be some more Donald Trump vote. One other county to mention is Duval County. This is up by Jacksonville, but the trends seem to be moving towards Hillary.
Let's stay on Florida, because there's probably no more important state early on in this evening. David Muir, what do you got in the exit polls?
Of course, the Clinton campaign wants Florida to lights out for the night, right? But John, you were talking about Miami-Dade. There's been so much talk about the early vote setting records, perhaps, with the Hispanic vote. Take a look, if you dive in at the racial makeup of the voters so far in Florida. Hispanic Latino voters making up 18%. This preliminary data the exit poll showing us, but that's just ticking up 1 percentage point from 4 years ago. And if you break it down, when did you make up your decision? Many of them, 61%, said much earlier than the most recent weeks. But look at this. This could be interesting as the night plays out. When asked if Trump's treatment of women bothers you after the audio released from that bus, 68% of Florida voters saying so far that bothered them a lot as they headed into the polls.
No, it's interesting. It's Martha Raddatz, you spent, as we said, a lot of time on the road, and a lot of the voters you talked to said it wasn't making that much of a difference to them.
So they went either way. It didn't seem like as big a deal as we're hearing about tonight. And I think it was very different in different states. Again, they knew every little change in whether or not her emails were up or down.
Okay, let's go back to things we're seeing here, especially with this focus on the Latino vote and the early vote, is the difference in the ground games.
Florida, that's his second home.
Florida is for the Donald Trump campaign. It's part of their core four.
We've got another big announcement out of the state of Florida, Marco Rubio and Donald Trump.
Yeah, in Miami-Dade, depending as it goes back and forth, Rubio outperforming Donald Trump. It's a little sweet revenge. Rubio's presidential campaign died in Florida with Trump. He said he was never going to run for Senate again. He finally decided to change his mind to run, and then he had to answer for everything he had done.
But from the debate.
But and
I want to bring that to Alex Castellanos' book, Crystal, and Marco Rubio, kind of a case study in the kind of with the nuclear codes. Yet, in the end, he comes around now.
Yes, he does, and that was the Trump in Florida. You know, Trump has been upset tonight.
And Bill, saying, I'm not voting for Donald Trump. Most of the elected officials came around.
And then if they're on the ballot, Carter, and I asked Pat Moynihan, Pat, did you really vote? American tradition. So I wonder.
We have some news coming in for the first time tonight. We are hearing for a cell phone number out in front of a mic.
Got to take another quick break.